And a lot of things have changed in the 30 years since I have been doing this. One of the things that I think when we first started hiring victim advocates or shelters started coming on board, we had grassroots folks who we really focused on safety planning. What is safety planning? Why is it important? And what makes a good safety plan? I'm very passionate about making sure individuals know how to safety plan and in what aspects that we should be doing safety planning. So why do we do this? Why do we safety plan? Safety, oh, it looks like, okay. All right. So it looks like, safety planning, the most important time for a victim or survivor is when they're leaving the abusive relationship. Leaving an abuser increases the lethality or the risk for someone up to 75%. And so, when we talk to our survivors and we're actually saying, hey, why don't you just leave? Our survivors know and they understand that the risk for death, being murdered, being severely hurt, increases greatly. They may not know it's 75%, but they know that it increases greatly. So we as advocates, when we say, well, why doesn't she just leave? It's important for us to remember that that is the most lethal time for somebody. And we need to honor and we need to respect their choices as to whether they choose to leave or whether they don't. Like I said before, it's notoriously the most dangerous time for a survivor. It's that situation where the abuser is feeling that they're losing power. They may sense or they may know that the survivor is thinking about leaving or they're pulling away, and the abuser is feeling like that they're losing control over that person, and so they ramp it up a little bit more, so they begin more controlling and more controlling. And so this period of time when someone is thinking about fleeing, it is very important that we take the time to actually do a personalized safety plan. On average, it takes a victim of domestic violence 7 attempts to leave an abusive relationship before they actually do. One thing about that number is that number has changed. When I first started out in the field, it was an average of 12 times before they actually were successful in leaving. So, that's something that has actually changed over a period of time. Okay, why safety plan? I don't know if any of you have ever been in a crisis situation, maybe a car accident, or have been a victim yourself. What happens to your mind? What happens to your brain when you are in that situation? Your adrenaline is pumping through you. You really are in that fight, flight, freeze type of a moment. It's very hard to think logically. Sometimes we run into a place that maybe is not the safest to hide. And so having a safety plan ahead of time and knowing what that is something that will help you in when that situation occurs. You don't have to necessarily think so hard because it's already in place and it's in your head. It's a plan. You know you can do this. You know you can find a safe place to be able to go. And I will stress throughout this that practicing your safety plan is really important. I was an EMT for a while, and the training that you do to go through that, the scenarios, the practicals, it's important that we do those so that it just becomes routine to us. So when you come up on that accident or you come up on that scene, you are able to actually do the things that you need to do without necessarily thinking about it or planning it. Now with safety plans, a lot of you who are working in this field, you know that there's safety plans out there. They're kind of a generic safety plan that you can get. And it basically goes through things. You can add this, this, and this, or you can fill in the blank. What I truly recommend is a personalized, practical plan that includes ways to remain safe while in various situations. So while in the relationship, while planning to leave the relationship, after you've already left, it may include your family, it may include work, it may include friends. And so the plan really needs to be specialized around the survivor. So it's important for us to actually spend the time and listen to the survivor and find out what are their strengths, what are their fears, help them be a part of that plan so that that plan is their ownership. It's not a generic plan that you just pulled off the internet. It is something that actually means something to them. So they are very involved in being able to create this plan. And down at the bottom there, I put in the strongheartshelpline.org. They have a section there of safety planning. So at some point, if you'd like to go to the strongheartshelpline.org website, they do have some safety planning ideas and suggestions that you could look at. So when I talked about safety planning, it's not just for survivors. Safety plans can be utilized for everyone. I just want you to think for a minute. Those of you who are working in the field or in medical work, social workers, advocates, and police officers, have you ever thought about a safety plan for yourself? There was a time, long time ago, that I was working as a victim advocate, and the room that I was in had a door on the front. There was the door. You walk in, there was my desk, and I was sitting behind it. And the only exit for me was over my desk and through whoever was there to get to the door. I never thought about that. The whole time that I was working there, one time I had somebody come into my office and they were talking with me about a protective order. This woman had been strangled by a shoelace. She had been severely beaten, very traumatized. And this was a period of time when protective orders, you had to put the address of where you actually reside on the protective order. It's been years and years ago. And she was filling out the protective order and looked down and realized that her address was actually going to be on the protective order, which would then tell him where she was actually living. And she just freaked out and became kind of volatile, scared me. That was the point when I realized my desk in my office was set up very wrong. I was able to talk my way out of that and talk my way around the desk and out the door. But after that, and after I calmed down, I realized I needed to move my office around. And so being able to place my desk this way with the door being here so that the survivor has access to get out and I have access to get out was a better setup for me. So in your own work, think about your own safety. How would you get out of your office? How would you make a phone call for help? Does your agency have code words? My agency has a code word that we use that is not necessarily a word that whomever might be threatening you would know what that meant, but it is a word that everybody else in the office knows that if anybody can hear you and you say that word, they know that they need to call 911 and get them there now. And so think about plans for your own safety, for your own work environment, as well as we are going through safety planning. So safety planning for survivors, yes, absolutely. We need to plan for survivors. But how many of you have had somebody say to you, well, my husband, my boyfriend, my partner has threatened to kill my family. I cannot leave because of my family. That's very real, and it does happen. And so safety planning with family members, friends, co-workers, doctor, clergy, social workers, other professionals in the field. They also need to know that it's okay to have a safety plan for them as well. Here's just the traits of an effective safety plan. It's not all encompassing. The one thing I want people to walk away with is that we all live in various areas. Not all of us are, able to access services very easily. I live on a dirt road that you cannot get up in the winter. Um, some of you may have clients that live in very remote areas, and so they are very isolated, and we have to take that into account when we're talking about an effective safety plan. But here's just just a kind of a visual of various things that you need to look at. It says caller centered. This slide was actually made for the crisis hotline. And so we talk about the caller, but this could be the survivor centered plan. Meet the caller where they are. We always hear us talking about trauma informed care. It means meeting the client where they are. That is so true. We do need to meet them where they are in their life. What they want to see happen, whether that is leave, stay, or whatever else it is that they have an idea of what they want to do. Meet the needs important to them. What's important to me may not be important to you. And so when we go through safety plans, we need to have dialogue with those that we are working with to be able to know what is their needs. My needs may be that for me to get out in the winter, I need to have my four-wheeler ready to go. That may not be a need for you. I've had people leave on horseback. I've had people leave walking out. I've had all kinds of situations. And so I need to know what it is that this person that I'm working with, what works for them. Preparedness for every scenario. So you want to go through the what ifs. What if this happens? What would you do? What if that happens? What could you do? So that they're thinking about this plan. They're thinking about the things that has happened in the past that may happen in the future that would be able to prepare them for that. Empower the survivor to stay safe. At all costs, they need to stay safe. That is first and foremost in working a safety plan is being as safe as they possibly can be. And then creating a collaboration. Everybody's situation is different. Even though we hear stories, they all sound the same and sometimes they all run together. We have to remember that for the person that we are working with, for that survivor, when they share their story with you, when they open their heart to you and their soul, you need to hold their story in the palm of your hands and treat it as if it is a new story every time. And being able to do that can be hard. It can be almost traumatizing to yourself in holding that story that way. But when you do, the survivor that you're working with can feel that and they know that you care. And so drawing on the things that they may have that they can use, such as church, family, friends, what other resources are out there that can help them to leave or help them be safe or get them somewhere, and collaborating with the other agencies, like a victim advocate, a coalition, whatever agencies that are in your area. So yeah, leaving, staying, already gone, all those situations we need to be prepared to be able to help them with this plan. Okay, when should we plan? You really should plan at all stages. When a survivor is ready to leave, when a survivor is staying with their abusive partner. Right now during COVID, gosh, there's not a lot of options for folks. A lot of us are in lockdown. We're not able to leave. And so it may feel like that there is nowhere else that we can go. So we need to be talking about if the person is going to stay with the abusive relationship, and that needs to be okay with us. It has to be their choice. When we're concerned for the safety and well-being of the caller, a lot of times I will say to the person, I am extremely worried about your safety. Is it okay if we take a moment and just talk a little bit about that? Could you share with me your thoughts on that? And that would open the door to then, talking about a safety plan and the need and the reason why we need to be able to do that. With family members, coworkers, friends, and survivors. And so family members, when somebody says, he's threatened, to kill my family, or the children, take the children. Those are real and those are scary. And so we need to be able to talk with them about what are the options with your family or with coworkers, friends. Do they know that you're in an abusive relationship? Do they know that this is real and this is something that they also need to take into account? And then, like I said, working with professionals. I don't know if any of you have ever been threatened by a survivor's perpetrator. I have been. I've gotten quite a few threats. I have been accused from anything from having the person hiding under my desk, which there's no way they could because my room was too small, to having them in my house, which was not true as well. And so, really think about professionally what it is that you need to do also when working a very volatile situation. Does anybody have any questions or comments so far? I do believe you have the ability to unmute yourself, or you can put it in the chat as well. Okay, how do we begin a safety plan? Listen to the survivors' experiences. They are the one who knows the most about their situation. If somebody says to you, they're going to kill me if I leave, take that to heart. Know that that is real. Survivors oftentimes will downplay what is really going on. And so if they say that to you, that is something that really needs to hit home. And we really need to have a dialogue about what is happening and what we can do to make them safe. So listen to their experience, find out their strengths. What are their strengths? I don't know of any survivor who doesn't have strengths. To be able to live with what is happening in your home, being basically held hostage, and still surviving, you have strengths. Draw on those strengths and talk to them about what they are. What do they normally do? What have you done in the past when this has happened? Let them know you see them as strengths. They may not be the most healthy things, but this is something that they have done to be able to survive this situation. As you're listening to them, it's good to provide options. Have you thought of this? What about this? To be able to let them to start think about, oh, hey, yeah, I do have some options. I did not think of that. Tailor to meet the needs of the survivor and in that moment. So if you are working with somebody who lives in a very remote area, it needs to be tailored to that. If you're working with somebody who maybe is in the city, it needs to be tailored to that. If you're working with somebody who is traditional, it needs to be tailored to that versus somebody who maybe is not so much traditional. They may have different ways of doing things. So be aware of those needs as well. Listen to the survivor. Like I said, they are the expert on their abuser. We don't know them. And so listen to them so that you can understand what this person has been going through. His process of safety planning, there's a little bit of a process to it. Assessing the situation, listening to them, finding out what is going on, assessing the situation, picking up on the things that you need to. Just a side note, one of the things that drives me crazy is we all have intakes that we have to do. I train people on setting down and doing an intake and just asking people a bunch of questions is really not the best way to get to know someone. When I sit down with them and say, tell me about you. Tell me what is happening. Usually by listening to that person, I am able to answer all of those intake questions by listening to their story. And so that is assessing the situation. We are hearing what they're saying. We're listening to their situation. We focus on their strengths, like I had said before. Identifying the immediate and future risks for their safety. What is happening in the home now? Is there drug involvement? Is there alcohol? Is there gang involvement? How remote are they? What I mean, is there cell service? I mean, those kinds of things are things we have to think about. Ask them what strategies they've tried in the past, what worked, what didn't work, and then provide an array of options. Think outside of the box and have a back and forth dialogue about what might work, what might not work. Oops. Let's see. Okay, safety in the home. That's one of the main things, because if you are choosing to stay, or if you have left and you're in a new home, you want to consider safer places in the home to go. So, do you think it's a very safe place to lock yourself maybe in a bathroom? Yeah, that might not be the most safe place, but it is one of the first places that people think to go because there's a lock on the door. In bathrooms, there's usually not a window to get out. Or if there is, it's really teeny. My house, there's no window. There's hard surfaces in the bathroom. I've had to unpick the bathroom door with a spam key. I don't know if many of you know what spam is, but we have spam and we like spam. But I will use a spam key to unlock the door because my little girl has flushed a whole bunch of stuff down the toilet and locked the door and I can't get in. It's very easy to get into a bathroom. It is very easy to push the door open and then you are cornered. You are in a space that has hard surfaces and it's very, very dangerous. So think about safer places that you may go. Kitchens are also a volatile place to be. There's knives, there's hard surfaces, and there's things that's readily available for somebody to use as a weapon. Garages also are very similar to that. There's hard surfaces. So, think about what is the safest place to go in the home? Where can you get out? Do you have the ability to get to a phone? Those types of things. And planning an escape route. What is your escape route? Do you have gas in your car? Do you always make sure that you've got that half a tank of gas or quarter of a tank or whatever you need to be able to get to the place that you have planned to go if you have this situation? How many of us have forgot how to memorize phone numbers? That would be me. We used to all have phone numbers memorized, but now we have our smartphones. I was just telling them that I just barely got a smartphone. I used to have a flip phone, but we all have our phones, and we just have them programmed in our phones, so we don't know the number of our child or mother or whatever that might be. And so you need to memorize important phone numbers just in case your phone is thrown, dropped, broke, smashed, or lost, or in the other room and you can't get to it. So memorize important phone numbers, whether that's a hotline or a safe person that you have arranged to be able to call if there is a situation. I always recommend with a person that I am working with, have a code word for your family and the person that you trust, that if you were to pick up that phone and say, the horses got out, that would be your code word for, I need you to call for help, or I need you to meet me somewhere. And it's okay that your children have a code word. You have a code word with your children. They know what's going on. They do. They don't know what to do unless we give them permission to be able to call the police or call grandma or call the hotline or whatever that might be. But a code word that the children maybe know, such as the horses are getting out. Then the child knows this is not a good time. I need to go to grandma's and I need to make a call. That needs to be something that we talk about with our children or our family. Preparing an emergency bag. You need an emergency bag, and that needs to be filled with things that you would need immediately. But I have seen people who have made emergency bags and then they hide them in their closet, and then guess who finds them and wants to know what's happening? Or they put an emergency bag in their car and they are found later, and then they have to explain why they have these things there. It is always best when you prepare your emergency bag that you actually stash it somewhere else, not on site. So at a friend's, an advocate's, family members, it is at another location, and it's ready to go with things that is needed, whether it's medications, identifications, things like that, changes of clothes, those things that you absolutely need for 3 days, 5 days. Create a code word. Like I said, I mentioned that before. If you have neighbors and you feel comfortable sharing it with them, at least that can alert them that violence is occurring or is getting ready to occur. Talking with your employer. Now, I know that is hard. I know that is very hard because a lot of times we don't want our employers knowing that the situation is going on. The other thing is that we're afraid we're going to lose our jobs. And unfortunately, that has happened. I worked with a company that called me, and they actually had an employee who's in an abusive relationship, and her partner would leave dead animals on her car out in the parking lot. And a lot of employees that work there were very scared and didn't know what to do. They wanted this person to be fired because of it, but the human services department, and we were able to work with transferring this person to a different location. But those things are difficult. Sometimes we need to talk with our employers. And if we have a human resources department, we need to go in as advocates and talk to them for ourselves and say, hey, if this happened here, because I'm going to tell you right now, advocates also can be victims of domestic violence. We need to ask them, is there a plan in place? What would happen if somebody that works for us was in this situation? Let's have a dialogue about that. What can your employer do to help with safety? Can they have somebody walk you out to your car? Can they change your work schedule so that maybe it's not the same? Do you have some time that you can take off from work? Maybe you could work from home for a while. What kinds of things can your employer do to help with safety? Like I said, changing work hours. I had a shelter worker in one of our rural areas that was actually being stalked by one of the victims she worked with, perpetrator. And so we went through with what they could do to help her in changing her work schedule, driving home a different way. We all seem to drive home the same way. Well, and for me, I don't have any other option. I have to drive the same way home every day. And so, be thinking about who's following you. Can you change it up a little bit? That's always something that I think is really important. Screening calls. A lot of times our abusive partners will continually call you at work. I've had people who have been called 15, 20, 30 times a day at work. And that also could be something that is very draining, especially if you have a secretary that is actually answering those calls and they're being transferred all the time. That can be something that is devastating. But having somebody who's able to screen the call and know that this is somebody who shouldn't be talking to you, that can also help in relieving that person continually to harass you while you're at work. Okay, safety when leaving. If possible, leave when the abusive partner is not at home. Right now during COVID, that can be very, very difficult because a lot of us are always at home. And so being able to figure out a different way to be able to do that, whether that is when you go to do chores or they go to do chores. I have cows I have to feed at a certain time. I know how long it takes. Think about those situations. But it's always best if the abusive person is not present when you leave. Pack a bag ahead of time and keep it in a secure location. Have a plan to where you go and how you will get there. Know where you're going to go. I would give yourself a couple of options with that and how you're going to get there. I worked with an individual who I went through the safety plan with them. I asked them about transportation. They had gas, the whole thing. The one thing that I forgot and the survivor did not think about is the only vehicle at home was a stick shift. It was a standard vehicle. She did not know how to drive that. and it ended up being horrible because got ready to leave and then realized could not leave. So make sure that we talk about these things when we are helping someone plan. Tell only trusted people your plan. I don't know how many times I've had people say that all of a sudden they know the plan, and it's because they told the abuser's sister or their mother or a friend, and it ended up getting back to the person. So only tell trusted individuals your plan. When we're talking about physical safety, we also need to talk about emotional safety planning. We all need support. We all need support now, dealing with all of the things that is going on in the world. Seek out supportive people, people that lift you up, whatever that might be. Seek those people that can really help you and not hinder you, such as, if you leave my son, I'll never see my grandchildren ever again. So you feel guilty, and that's not what you need at that moment. Create a safe place to process your emotions. It's okay to cry. I tell people that all the time, and I have to remind myself that sometimes I'm just have gotten emotional, and I need time to be able to process those things. And I may need somebody to call to be able to talk those through. Self-care tactics, talk with them. What do you do to de-stress? We also need to remember those as well. What do you do? Do you sage? Do you do yoga? Do you do meditation? Do you walk? Do you dance? Do you sweat? What is it that you do to be able to take care of self? Because that is something that is so very important. Discuss what the survivor is already doing to attend to their emotional needs. A lot of our survivors are going to say, you know what, I drink, I smoke, or they may do drugs. That's what they have been able to figure out. That's what they do in order to survive emotionally. And how are you going to respond to that? Okay, I'm going to show a video, and we're going to hope and pray that it actually goes well. So this is a tech abuse. We're going to spend a few moments here talking about tech safety and what is going on with social media.
Domestic and family violence has got an increasingly broad definition in most pieces of legislation around the country, and generally it covers behaviours that are coercive and controlling. So that might include physical violence, sexual violence, emotional abuse, but it also includes things like technology facilitated abuse as well.
He used to put a recorder underneath my seat when I drove to work because I used to pick up a mate. While I was at work, he'd come down and get it out of the car. I suppose to listen to what I'd been discussing, and I went and got a protection order on my own. No one knew. I was ashamed. One of the conditions on the order is that he can't have anything to do with me on social media. So some of the breaches on the protection order were from Facebook, and he's put stuff up there about me. Tells people I'm an old psycho bitch and that I've always had problems. He's got open Facebook so everyone sees it.
The studies aren't completely clear about what proportion of people experience technology abuse, but we know that it's increasing because the accessibility of technology is increasing for people. Any piece of technology you can think of can probably be used for abuse.
He was like a watchdog. He had this habit of putting USB sticks and recording devices and stuff like that all the way throughout the house. I confronted him and I said, "Why have you done that?" And he said, "Oh, I was just wanting to see how you were doing." whether you were happy. And I said, you know, you could have just asked me. In the house, I didn't feel safe anywhere. No privacy whatsoever.
We're now seeing homes being developed in ways that where the basic infrastructure of home is becoming increasingly sensorized. Well, the sheer density and volume of data that's now going to be collected from the sensorized smart home means that a potential abuser is going to have access to a whole range of new data about the intimate patterns and behaviors of a victim. That alone may mean that certain patterns of new forms of abuse could possibly take place.
This one week he brings Emily back from a contact visit and he's like, oh yeah, you need to take this doll. Emily really wants it. So I'm like, okay, they take it with us. Anyway, we went to this tribunal hearing about the lease. And well, I assumed he didn't know that I had moved. And he says, you know, what does it matter that you live at this and this address, which was the address of my friend's house, the one that I just moved in with. The thing about this doll is that Emily didn't care for the doll and the back had been sewn shut. So that night at dinner, I opened it up. He had put a GPS sender in the doll. His idea was about, you know, IP cameras, full Wi-Fi cameras that you could access from your phone away from home. He would use that to spy on me all day. He would move the camera around, following me. It would turn towards the bathroom and then it would turn towards me. I'm in my 30s and living with my parents. Neil would just break into anywhere I live. Now that we got the cameras at my parents' place, it's kind of a safety net for me.
Increasingly, we've actually seen that women are using, for example, recordings, whether they're visual or video or audio recordings of their partners in evidence in court. So obviously that's a really helpful thing for women, but clearly there are all these other ways that it's used against them as well.
The opportunity is that violence that was often undertaken in completely private places may no longer be completely private. And there's an opportunity in which we can use that data and the home itself to better protect the victim.
Okay, so yeah, technology safety. I'm sure that you have all had situations where somebody has either said, they're continuing to harass me on Facebook, they are continually texting me, I'm scared that they know where I am all the time, I think that there's a bug in my car, those types of things. I hear those quite frequently. I didn't used to, but the more and more as time has gone by, I am finding that the tech abuse is something that is rising, and it's something that we need to believe people when they say it, even though they may sound crazy, and what they're saying sounds crazy. A lot of things are really true now. They are very true. So safety planning around technology, unwanted or repeated calls or texts, breaking into someone's social media network account, posting things that you didn't really say, pressure to share embarrassing or private photos or videos. This is something in my area, my neck of the woods out here in the basin, that our kids, our teenagers who are in dating violent situations, their boyfriends are pressuring them into videotaping themselves in embarrassing or private situations, and then they're sharing that. Once it's shared, it's out there. Posting nude photos without your consent, breaking into your emails, intercepting the Wi-Fi signals. Those are all things that you can do fairly cheaply as far as interrupting signals or breaking into computers. If you go online, you go to Radio Shack or something like that, a lot of these devices you can get, they're $19.99. It's very easy to get. I had a client that I was working with. She was in a plural situation, so she was in a polygamous family, left the abusive relationship, and this person had put some software on her phone and could hear any kind of dialogue or anything going on in the home by turning on his computer and clicking onto this software, and he could hear what was going on in the house. So even though we had gotten this person a phone that was completely separate, he could always hear the conversation that she was having on that other phone. He was only hearing her side, but he could still hear it. So there's some pretty scary things out there that are really not that hard to get a hold of. Our abusers go to great lengths to attempt to control the person, scare them. I know where you are. I know where you live. I knew you went to the grocery store at this time, and I knew you bought this. Those things are really frightening. Some other examples of vulnerable technologies: computers, cell phones, social media, email, cordless phones. I don't know if any of you remember the baby monitors that used to be available. I had one, and I often could hear the phone conversation of my neighbors through the baby monitor. It was on the same frequency back then. And so, you just never know. Common ways technology is used by abusive partners: GPS trafficking. It is in everything. It is in our new cars. It is in our phones. It is in our devices. It's very easy to track someone unless you know how to turn that off. Keystroke logging hardware, having that on your computer, on your tablets and your phones, then that somebody knows exactly what you're doing all the time. Hacking into cell phones, social media, excessive texting, email, we talked about that. And then of course the Wi-Fi signals. If a survivor says they're being stalked, tracked, or monitored, you need to believe them. They probably are. And here just is some gadgets that we have found online that is really easy to get. You can buy them online, and like I said, most of them are $19.95. We have the remote spy right here. There is fake text. There's the ability to make the text look like it came from you to someone else when you did not in fact send that. There's recording devices. There's all kinds of things that you can actually get that can spy on you and know exactly what you're doing, or make somebody else think that you're saying something that you really truly are not. So here's just a couple of statistics. The Safety Net Project survey. There is a safety net, and at the bottom of this, you'll see a website that you can go on and actually gather more information on the misuse of technology. But 97% said abusers misuse technology to stalk, harass, and control them. 97%. I mean, that's a huge amount. 96% said abusers harass them via text message. 55% said offenders post abusive content about victims online. 71% said the abuser monitored victims' computer use. 41% said abusers stalk victims through GPS. 86% said abusers harass victims through social media. And then right there at the bottom is the nnedb.org content, and this technology safety. The National Network to End Domestic Violence is a place that you can call for tech questions or to learn more about technology and abuse. We also at the Utah Domestic Violence Coalition have a training that is more in depth on technology and the ways that it is used to harass survivors, and also things that you can do to help prevent that. Okay, ways of staying safe while using technology. Tell survivors to trust their instincts. And really, if they feel like that they're being harassed, they're being stalked through technology, they probably are. Purchase prepaid phones. I know that there are programs out there that do have prepaid phones that they get through their grants. but make sure that the person understands that just because you have a prepaid phone, if there is a recording device in your home, they will hear the other end of your conversation. And so it's always best to maybe go outside if you're going to be speaking on that phone, or somewhere else. Maybe turn your phone off to, be safe. Take the battery out, whatever it is that you need to do to make sure that you're safe. Check cell phone accounts to see if there's a parental monitoring on that. A lot of us can do parental monitoring, especially if we have a shared plan. They can click that on. Our cell phone companies make this sound great. This is safe. This is a way a parent can keep track of their kid. It's also a way that somebody can stalk you. And so knowing about the parental monitoring and checking with your cell phone company to find out exactly what you can do to make yourself safer. Change passwords on emails and social media. I mean, how many of us use our kid's birthday or our mom's birthday or a name, something that is very easy actually for someone to use? We need to make sure and change those up. Change them frequently. I know it's a pain. I hate doing it. And a lot of times I don't. But I highly recommend that. That's something that we get in the habit of doing. Check your cell phone for unknown apps. So go in the app area and look and see if there's something there you're not familiar with. The abuser could have downloaded the app onto your phone, and they are monitoring everything you do. There is also ghost apps that you can't find. You can't see them. So if you feel that something is not right, take your phone into the provider and have them look at it and see if there's something working in the background that you can't see, and have them reset your phone. Or it may be that you need to actually get a new phone number, whatever that might be. Check computer for any unknown external devices. Like the little thumb drives. I don't know if any of you can see this. This is a teeny thumb drive. You can't even hardly see that. When it's plugged into my computer, a lot of times I don't even know it's there. And so little teeny devices like this is something that you want to look for on your computer to see if there's anything there. Use a safe computer if you're going to use one. If you need to go to the library or you need to go somewhere else, change your passwords and don't access the accounts at home if you possibly can, because there is a way you can go into the history and see where somebody has been. It's just like in the day when you had caller ID on your phone. Somebody could just go through and scroll through and see the caller ID, who's called you, and then they'll just push redial and they'll see the last people that you actually talked to. So delete those things. Make sure they're not there, especially if you're calling somebody who you not necessarily want them to know. Delete that and then immediately call somebody that you usually call, like your mother or whatever. So if they see that last redialed number, it's not anybody that draws suspicion. Create new unidentifiable email addresses. Now, if you're going to create a new email address, you're getting ready to leave a situation, do not cancel your current email addresses. Leave them there. You don't have to work on them a whole lot, but leave them there open and functioning so that doesn't draw suspicion. But you can create a new email address or new accounts and use them. Let trusted people know what they are, but leave the old one open so it doesn't draw suspicion as to why you canceled that. Teach your children computer safety. I just had a conference call. We were talking about vulnerability in our children right now. Right now, our children are being solicited at high rates because we're all home. We're on a computer and they're not being monitored. So that is something that you really need to talk with your children about. Don't open attachments because daddy could be sending them something. Click on that and open it, and it just downloads right onto your device. Get a new computer if you can. That's not always something that you can afford to do because it's very difficult to remove any spyware. Okay, cell phone safety. I know I'm getting close to running out of time, so we're going to speed through some of these. Turn off the GPS on your phone if you can, if you know how to do that. If not, have somebody show you how. Some cell phones allow GPS only when dialing 911. Prepaid phones, cell phones. How do you safely plan around cell phones? So talk with your survivor about that as well. Being conservative about what you post. If you're on social media and that is the way you communicate, be very conservative about what you do. Don't post your safety plan on social media. A friend of a friend of a friend of your abuser that you forgot that you friended will see that, take a screenshot of it, and send it to the abuser. So be very careful about what you're posting. Maintain strict control over privacy settings. Ask friends not to post or share anything about you. Our friends may not realize you sent them a picture of you guys going on vacation and they posted it on theirs. And so be very cautious and cognizant about things that may be going out into social media. Consider unfriending people or actually taking a break from social media for a while. If you're going to do any changes like that, like new passwords, make sure you're on a safe computer, because if you have the keystroke on your computer, that's just sent the abuser your new password. So just be cognizant of those types of things. Look for any surveillance devices in the home or at work. Documenting abuse. This is really important. Document what's happened. Keep a log, take screenshots, take photographs, print out pages. If you get text messages, you can send those text messages to your email. Don't delete them, keep them. Any recordings that they may leave, make sure you keep them, because that may be information that you need to have later on. This is a lot of what we talked about before: assessing the technology in the survivor's life, helping them understand it, always keep safety in mind when using technology, and then always document anything that happens. Just the last little bit, when you're talking about a safety plan, items to take. And this is a list of things that you can get on the website that I had talked about before, and we can send that out if we need to. But items to take: children, money, keys, extra clothes, medicines, important papers, birth certificates, bank account numbers, driver's licenses, your BDI or CDIB cards, any kind of tribal membership papers that you may need, anything that you might need. Try to make sure that you have those readily available. Car registration, divorce papers, anything like that, pictures, jewelry, or items that your children may need, like a favorite blankie or a toy that helps them feel more comfortable. Like I said before, having important phone numbers, friends and neighbors that you can tell about and trust, and how to get out of your home safely. Okay, and the last thing is practice your plan. Make sure they practice it. Ask them if they're practicing it. Help them practice it, because that is something that they need to do in order for it to be smooth, or as smooth as can be, when they are in the progress of leaving. Here's a couple of resources that you can also access: the Strong Hearts helpline. We have the Restoring Ancestral Winds Coalition is on there. There's a couple of other ones. There's mine at the very end. So anybody who wants to access those resources and maybe devise ways to create plans in your own area, please feel free to do. So questions? Anybody have questions, comments?